the most dangerous country on earth for a woman, this is man's world Afghanistan. It's 15 years since the Taliban banished women and girls from public gaze, and they've been slow to return. The hardliners of that regime made sure art would never imitate dreadful life. Television sets were draped in the streets. But now the box is making a comeback, and it's revealing every hidden taboo in the lives of women. Every Friday night, Afghanis tune into their favourite soapy, Secrets of the House. It's opening minds by tackling drug abuse, forced and underage marriages, and corruption. In every sense, this is reality television. And from the sidelines, Tolo Television's head of drama. After a career in scriptwriting and production in Australia, Trudy Ann Tierney moved to Kabul to work with this country's emerging program makers.
Love marriages is a huge one. Women standing up to their families and saying, no, I want to marry someone, you know, someone of my choosing. And every season we have a love marriage because they're so popular with our audience. Freezing. So, you're shooting in this direction?
Trudy Ann Tierney has a problem. She can't hold on to actors. It's hard enough being a working woman in Afghanistan, but it's asking for trouble to be on television, acting out the problems in someone else's fictional life.
Do you know that we're trying to find a new Soraya? Do you know any actresses? This is a beautiful actress called Arzu who has been with the series from the very start, virtually. 2 days before we started shooting, we found out that she was going to India to live. She was ostracised by her family. Her mother was really the only person that stuck by her. And she's had an uncle who's been threatening her for quite some time now. Threats of physical abuse, threats of killing her. It's a huge loss.
All the goodwill and billions of dollars of foreign money pouring into this country has brought only limited improvement to the lives of the female population. More girls go to school here now, but still only 13% of Afghan women can read and write. In the country especially, life can be miserable. More than 2/3 of women endure forced marriages. Most girls still marry under the age of 16. Brides are often purchased, sometimes in exchange for animals.
You'd be right in thinking it's hard to shock an Afghan. Through decades of war and turmoil, these people have seen everything. But something happened a few weeks back that made this country stop and reflect on what on earth was happening here. It was the horrific experience of a 15-year-old girl, and it moved everyone, right up to the president himself.
In the newsroom of Afghanistan's Tolo TV, the first grainy and ghost-like images of a tortured teenager jolted hardened reporters. It was to become Shakila Ibrahim Kale's story over the next few days.
به عنوان یک زن من نخستین باره که در مورد سحر گل شنیدم شاک دیدم، سرم شاک آمد، بسیار جگرخون شدم. وقتی من تصاویر می دیدم با هر قسمت که گزارش می نوشتم اشک از چشمایم سرازیر بود.
15-year-old bride Sahar Gul was rescued by police after weeks of imprisonment and torture at the hands of her husband's family. It's claimed her mother-in-law and sister-in-law brutalised her more than anyone. She'd been sold to the family to pay a debt and had refused to become a prostitute to bring in more money.
یک رویداد دردآور بود و این تنها سحرگل نیست. شاید مثل سحرگل بانوای دیگری باشند که از این بدتر مورد خشونت‌های خانوادگی قرار داشته باشند که ما از او آگاهی نداشته باشیم.
Across town was someone else who cared.
In the case of Sahar Gul, her in-laws all had psychological problems. They tortured the girl only to gain pleasure from it.
19-year-old student NOORJAHAN AKBAR has struck up a special relationship with the tortured teenager, raising money for her and offering what was lacking in her recovery, emotional support.
There's violence from women against other women in the society. And of course they're not going to beat up men, they're going to beat up other women when they're angry, because we never teach them to be peacefully expressive. We never give them the chance to be productive.
We're coming to see Sahar Gul a month after she arrived for treatment at this hospital in Kabul.
The last time I came, they didn't let me see her, so I hope this time it will be easier.
So how is she psychologically?
The last time I saw her, not so good. I think she's still in a state of denial. She's not able to talk much. When I ask her, she says she's okay, but she talks very little. Salam. Ayel testum.
Salam.
Salam. Salam. Ayel test که محمد بودم. خوب هستی؟ Her fingernails were pulled out, her hair was pulled out, she was burned with cigarette. Parts of her body, meat, were taken off with knives and other things. She was beaten up repeatedly every day.
And starved.
Yes. میایید جور شدم میایید چقدر مقبول شده دختر چقدر مقبول شده میایید رنگ نخون بزنم برات beating is still very common. I remember my grandfather used to have 2 whips on his wall, one for his dog and one for his wife. I don't think that has changed much outside Kabul in the rural areas. Maybe not all of them receive as much torture as Sahar Gul does, but I think, or did, but I think it's still very prevalent. I think the good thing is that if this had happened 5 years ago, nobody would have heard about it. This has happened during the Taliban, nobody would have known about it. Zeist? دیگه وقت رنگ نخون زدی کدام وقت؟ نه دفعه اول تست مبارک. سایکو خوب شست؟ دیدی انگشت هایتا؟ سایکو خوش آمد؟ خوب شست؟ اوکی تشویش نکن کل چیز خوب میشه یک روز تو یک زندگی نوش شروع میکنیم کل چیز خوب میشه خدافز نخونایت مقبول شد؟
So what will become of her now?
I don't know. Originally the plan was to send her to India, like they did with Mumtaz, the girl who had acid sprayed on her face. But I think now what's going to happen is that after her recovery, they will send her to Badakhshan to live with her brother.
Will she be okay with her brother though?
Yeah, I think so. Now the brother has learned his lesson, maybe too late, but I think he has. When I talked to him, he seemed, he felt a lot of regret, remorse for what he did.
With her mother in tow for security, NOORJAHAN AKBAR is out and about again. She's not from a privileged background, nor did she grow up in the West like many educated youngsters her age. As a true Afghani, she's attached to her country, but appalled by what's become of it.
But Anita will be there, and Batul will be there, and Vic.
NOORJAHAN has founded her own lobby group to fight for the rights of a new generation of modern Afghan women. Their goals are hardly lofty. They simply want to reclaim the streets and be able to walk unhindered to work or study, and do so in the clothes they choose.
Why should I try to be a man? Why should I try to cover up everything that makes me a woman? Cover up my hair, cover up my sense of style, cover up the way I talk, cover up my voice, shut up and not talk in front of men just because I'm a woman.
NOORJAHAN has arrived at the office of her Young Women for Change group. The volunteers are planning a survey to gauge the extent of street harassment.
Okay. It was brought by the Taliban in the first place because they beat up women in the streets if they were alone. You know, now we have a less extreme version of it, where local people do the same thing if a woman is out in the streets and alone.
To show me what it's like to be a woman and alone on the streets, NOORJAHAN takes me to a shopping precinct in Kabul. Just out of range, but captured on a camera hidden in a handbag, she's accosted by a stranger.
This guy just grabbed him. Where? Down there.
Yeah, he tried to grab me and then I hit his hand with my bag.
What was that about?
It's just about, you know, she's a woman, she's alone, so she must be a prostitute, otherwise she wouldn't be in the streets. And you know, if she's a prostitute, she's ready to be grabbed, to be groped, to be touched, her breasts to be pulled. It doesn't really matter, she's a prostitute.
Misogyny runs deep in this country, but sometimes women have little support from each other. A minute later, NOORJAHAN is set upon again, this time by an elderly woman.
We don't know how to respect women. Neither men nor women, no one knows it. Women don't respect themselves. This is how everyone is treated, every woman. Any woman who dares take off her burqa and walk like a human being is treated like this. I think when you are born a woman in Afghanistan, you are taught every day to hate yourself. When you are born, when I was born, my grandma wouldn't talk to my mom for 2 weeks because she had given birth to a 4th daughter in a row.
I'm back on the streets with two of NOORJAHAN's volunteers, Nasima Zirak and Sahar Gul. They want to talk to men as well to find out why they harass. The men we meet are mostly agreeable and polite in front of our cameras. It shows that if men do harass, many of them at least know it's wrong. This man says men are frustrated because they're not marrying early enough.
پرابلم اساسی عمده از این است که جوانان نمیتونن که دمو وقت زمان معینش ازدواج کنن رسیدگی ندارن دیگه اینمی پرابلم‌های بوار می که اینا در بیرون که مبراین مشکلاتی است که با مزاحم با خانم‌ها میشن.
Many women wouldn't dare tell their families about being harassed. Fathers, mothers and brothers could blame them for attracting attention. Harassed women are often grounded by their families, no more working or going to university. But despite the enlightened views of some men these women speak to, the research volunteers are themselves constantly harassed.
See? So
What did you say?
they were harassing us.
What kind of things would they say?
Well,
They say
it's Islamic
any
country.
kind of-
You should change your dressing. You should be covered in like.
Or they would say, what a beautiful girl, what a good figure, and these kind of stuff. Or would you take my number? Can I have your number? These kind of things.
On the scales of injustice, street harassment might not seem the greatest abomination in this country. But it's symptomatic of a society where there is chaos, corruption and no equality anywhere. I've come to meet those who form the inner circle of the traditional establishment here. Businessman Ahmad Shah AHMAZAI was a one-time close friend of Osama bin Laden in the 1980s, when they both fought against another foreign invader, the Soviet Union. By his reckoning, the likes of NOORJAHAN and her Young Women for Change are under the influence of Westerners who want to implant new values and morality here.
The Westerners, they want Afghan women, they just to dress and then walk and then act like a Western lady, and this is not possible in this country.
Would you accept that domestic violence is a big problem in this society as well?
No, like what?
A man beating his wife, being cruel?
This is not allowed. This is not allowed in human rights, and this is not allowed in Islam. Beating is completely out of question. And when two couples marry, men and women, they are the closest people to each other. This country is a Muslim country. Islamically, a woman must be respected very much, and nobody can touch, nobody can do anything wrong to a woman.
But it might be wrong, but it still happens, doesn't it?
Of course, of course.
When you're born a woman in Afghanistan, every day you fight. You don't live, you just fight. Every day is a fight. Women are rarely asked by their husbands if they would like to have sex. It's almost always imposed. And they're taught to be ashamed of being a woman. So a woman's sexual desires is wrong.
It's only a recent innovation, but victims of domestic abuse now have somewhere to escape to. A patchwork of women's shelters reside in secure and discreet locations across Afghanistan. I visited one in the back streets of Kabul. Most of these women are running from families who want to marry them off, or the families of prospective husbands in arranged marriages they want no part of. 18-year-old Nagba escaped a man she was promised to when she was 13.
ما تقریبا 5 سال پیش پدر مرا بر یک شخص بیگانه داد دیگه که هیچ نمیشناخته میشه دیگه من هیچ اجازت نداشتم مرا از مکتبم دیگه من کرد گفت مکتبم نرو باز دیگه میخواست که عروسی کنه باز من خوش نداشتم از خاطر دیگه برآمدم از خانه.
Some of these women have children born here who've never known what life on the outside is all about. In a country blighted by heroin addiction on a dreadful scale, families are so easily fractured. For this woman, it was a do-or-die escape.
مشکل خانوادگی دارم دیگه شهر معتاد است میزنه لد کوب میکنه میخواست که بچه مرا بکشه ما از خانه فرار کنیم دیگه اینجا.
The mullah beats up the boys in the religious center, and the boys come home and beat up their wives, and the wives beat up their children, and the children beat up other children. It's a cycle.
Well-meaning campaigns of the international community have yet to reach many areas of rural Afghanistan, unlike television. Tolo TV reporter Shakila Ibrahim is out on the streets covering the latest corruption scandal. A developer has been accused of building illegally. The site has been locked down while police investigate. Shakila covers everything from corruption to women's issues, and the fact that she's a female television reporter is an issue itself. The widow with 3 children is working full-time to place food on the table. But female television presenters have been murdered in this country just because they are women. And Shakila's family has persuaded her just to voice her reports and not show her face on local TV.
حتی در ولایت خب با چالش‌های فراوانی روبرو هستند. فکر نمی‌کنم که خانم‌ها اکثراً در رسانه‌ها کار کرده بتوانند از اثر ناامنی‌ها. در مرکز هم ناامنی‌ها سبب از این میشه که اکثر خانواده‌ها دخترای خدا اجازه ندادند که در رسانه‌ها کار بکنن.
Is that coming out of the actors' mouths when they're talking?
Across in the drama department at Tolo TV, Australian producer Trudy-Ann Tierney is still looking for an actress to replace the star who fled to India because of death threats from her uncle.
She's in 2 big scenes in episode 2, isn't she?
Her schedule and storylines in chaos, Tolo's team of writers need to think about writing the character out of the script in a plausible way.
But if worse came to worse and we couldn't find an actress, we could kill her. All right, sweeties. For our female actors, I want to say it's akin to being a prostitute, but it almost is. It's considered a very, very lowly line of work to be in. A lot of the women suffer ostracism from their families. They can be abused when they're out in the community. So it's a difficult choice to make as a career choice.
But the men of Tolo TV are stepping in as well for some groundbreaking television. This is Afghanistan's Dr. Phil. Each afternoon at 2, medical doctor and counsellor Yasin Babrak sits in the chair to offer advice to mainly women callers who phone in. They talk about problems they've never discussed openly before and some of the new possibilities in life.
Women having the freedom to work outside of the home, women having the freedom to marry who they want to marry, women getting an education. Yeah, there's not a lot that we haven't covered in terms of pushing the boundaries for Afghan television.
The homegrown women trying to change this country are making their own leaders stand up and take notice. President Karzai has now picked up on the case of tortured bride Sahar Gul. He visited her in hospital and ordered police to take the investigation more seriously. Sahar's mother-in-law and sister-in-law have been arrested. Her husband is still on the run. And NOORJAHAN AKBAR is about to leave for a few months to take up a university scholarship in the United States, from where she'll still run her Young Women for Change group. She leaves behind a band of volunteers who'll forge ahead with the campaign against the harassment of women on the street. She'll also leave a mother won over by her daughter's convictions.
این نظر است دیگه به خاطر که فامیلا در 20 سال جنگ خوب بود همگیشان در زیر چادری بودن دیگه خانما یا میبر آمدن یک وضعیت خراب.
Most men who harass women don't allow their own women to be on the streets, don't allow their own women to be active in the society. So they view every other woman who is active as bad or as a prostitute. And that's because they can't visualize their own daughter or wife being on the streets because they're just that strict.
I see now a generation of amazing young women who are so progressive and smart and determined to make change and to sustain change within society. There's this other extreme where I just see that in some ways men are going a bit backwards. You know, A lot of the freedoms that were afforded to women in the early days are slowly being eroded away, and I see a lot of men becoming much more conservative.
Almost every woman you ask in Afghanistan if she would rather be a man, she would say yes. I wouldn't. Because now I realize that even though I'm a woman in Afghanistan, there are many things I can do.